John Washington checked his watch as he walked up the stone steps of First National Bank. It was 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. He was running behind schedule after his lunch meeting had gone longer than expected. His assistant had already emailed him twice about the 3 p.m. conference call with investors. John needed to deposit several checks for the Washington Family Trust and make a withdrawal before heading back to his office. The bank's glass doors slid open. Cool air hit John's face as he stepped inside. The main floor was busy but not crowded. 5 teller windows were open with short lines at each. John straightened his navy blue suit jacket and adjusted his red tie. He had been coming to this branch for over 10 years. Most of the staff knew him by name. John noticed several new faces behind the counter. The bank had recently changed ownership, and many familiar employees had left. He also spotted a new security guard standing near the entrance, a stocky, white man with a crew cut who watched people as they entered. The guard's name tag read, Kevin Miller. John joined the shortest line and waited patiently. He scrolled through emails on his phone, preparing notes for his upcoming call. The elderly couple ahead of him finished their transaction. Just as John stepped forward, the teller put up a "Next window please" sign and closed her station. John moved to the next line. A middle-aged white woman in a floral dress, Diane Porter, entered the bank and stood behind him. John continued reviewing documents on his phone. 3 minutes later, another teller station opened up. "I can help the next customer," called Melanie Adams, a young teller John hadn't seen before. John stepped forward, but Diane rushed past him, bumping his shoulder. "Excuse me," John said calmly. "I believe I was next in line." Diane glared at him. "I'm in a hurry." John showed his bank card. "I understand, but I've been waiting. I won't take long." The teller, Melanie, looked uncomfortable. She glanced between John and Diane, then at the security guard who had moved closer to them. "Ma'am," John said to Melanie, "I just need to make a quick deposit and withdrawal for my account." Melanie bit her lip. "Sir, could you please wait? I'll help this lady first, and then I'll assist you right away." John stepped back, confused but not wanting to create a scene. He had never been skipped in line at this bank before. He moved to the side and sent a text to his assistant. "Running late. May need to join call from car." Kevin Miller, the security guard, approached John. "Sir, what are you doing?" John looked up from his phone. "I'm waiting for the next available teller. The lady took my spot in line." Kevin's face hardened. "You're loitering and disrupting bank operations." "Disrupting? I'm just waiting my turn," John replied, keeping his voice level. "You need to lower your voice," Kevin said, despite John speaking at a normal volume. "I'm speaking normally," John said. "I've been a client here for over 10 years. I just need to make a quick transaction." By now, several customers were watching. The bank manager, Peter Ross, was nowhere to be seen. He would have recognized John immediately. "Show me your ID," Kevin demanded. John reached for his wallet and presented his driver's license and bank card. "I'm John Washington. I have several accounts here. You can verify with any of the regular tellers." Kevin barely glanced at the ID. "You're causing a disturbance. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "A disturbance?" "I'm standing quietly, waiting for service," John said. "Could you please call the manager?" "Peter knows me." "Peter isn't in today," Kevin said. "I'm not going to ask you again. Leave now, or I'll have you removed." John looked around in disbelief. Several customers were watching with uncomfortable expressions. Diane was completing her transaction, avoiding eye contact. "This is ridiculous," John said. "I'm a customer here. I need to speak with someone in charge." Kevin spoke into his radio. "I need backup at the main floor. Uncooperative individual refusing to leave." 2 more security guards appeared from a side door. One was tall and thin, the other shorter with broad shoulders. Neither wore name tags. "Sir, you need to exit the building now," the taller guard said. John held his ground. "I've done nothing wrong. I'm a customer trying to conduct business. This is discrimination, plain and simple." The 3 guards surrounded John. Kevin grabbed his left arm while the shorter guard took his right. John didn't resist, but didn't move voluntarily either. Get your hands off me, John said firmly. This is completely unprofessional. The guards tightened their grip and began forcing him toward the exit. John's expensive leather briefcase fell to the floor, papers spilling out. As they pulled him, John's suit jacket tore at the shoulder. You're damaging my property, John protested. This is assault. Customers watched in shocked silence. One young woman had her phone out, recording the scene. Melanie, the teller, looked horrified, but said nothing. The guards pushed John through the front doors and onto the sidewalk. He stumbled but caught himself before falling. Don't come back, Kevin warned, standing in the doorway. John straightened his torn jacket, his face a mask of controlled anger. You have made a serious mistake today. Across the street, a bus had stopped. Several passengers were watching and recording with their phones. A street vendor selling hot dogs had also captured the incident on video. John pulled out his phone and called his cousin Alicia, the family's attorney. Alicia, something just happened that you need to hear about, he said, walking toward his car. I was forcibly removed from First National Bank for absolutely no reason. Alicia's voice came through clearly. Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? No, just a torn jacket and wounded pride, John replied. But this isn't over. Where are you now? She asked. Heading to my car. I have a conference call at 3 a.m. Cancel it, Alicia said firmly. Come to my office instead. We need to discuss this immediately. John reached his black Mercedes and sat inside, taking a moment to collect himself. His hands were shaking slightly, not from fear but from anger and disbelief. In all his 38 years, he had experienced discrimination before, but never so blatantly, at an institution that had held his family's money for generations. He started the car and called his assistant. Claire, please reschedule the investor call. Something urgent has come up. As John drove toward Alicia's downtown office, his phone buzzed with a news alert. He glanced at it at a red light. Incident at First National Bank. Well-dressed black. Man forcibly removed by security. Video going viral. That was fast, John thought. He hadn't even left the parking lot before the videos hit social media. At another stoplight, John called his Uncle Frederick, the chairman of the Washington Family Trust. Uncle Fred, we have a situation, John said when his uncle answered. I'm already seeing it, Frederick replied, his voice grave. Your face is all over Twitter. Are you okay? Yes, sir. Heading to Alicia's office now. Good. I'll meet you there in 30 minutes, Frederick said. And John? This won't stand. I know, Uncle Fred. John ended the call and continued driving. What had started as a routine bank visit would soon become something much bigger. The Washington family had significant resources and influence. First, National Bank had just made an enemy of one of its largest clients, a $2.4 billion trust fund that had been with them for 3 generations. Little did the bank know that their actions today would cost them far more than a single customer. By this time tomorrow, the entire financial world would be watching what happened next. The law offices of Washington and Associates occupied the entire 32nd floor of a downtown skyscraper. John stepped out of the elevator and walked through glass doors etched with the family name. The receptionist immediately recognized him. Mr. Washington, are you all right? We've been seeing the videos, she said with concern. I'm fine, Susan. Is Alicia in her office? John asked. Yes, sir. She's waiting for you. Your uncle just called to say he's 10 minutes away. John nodded and walked down the hallway. His cousin Alicia's corner office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. At 42, Alicia was 4 years older than John and had been the trust's lead counsel for the past decade. She was standing by her desk, watching a news report on a wall-mounted screen when John entered. They're running the story already, she said, pointing to the TV. The screen showed cell phone footage of John being forced out of the bank. His face was clearly visible. The news ticker at the bottom read, Prominent businessman forcibly removed from First National Bank. Witnesses claim racial profiling. That was fast, John said, removing his torn jacket. Alicia muted the TV and came around her desk. Are you hurt? Should we have a doctor look at you? I'm fine, John assured her. Just angry and embarrassed. You have every right to be, Alicia said. She gestured to a chair. Sit. Tell me exactly what happened from the beginning. John sat down and recounted the events at the bank in detail. Alicia took notes, occasionally asking for clarification. When he finished, she shook her head in disbelief. This is textbook discrimination, she said. We have multiple grounds for legal action. I don't know if I want to sue, John admitted. The publicity, the dragged-out process. We don't have to decide that right now, Alicia replied. But we need to document everything while it's fresh. A knock at the door interrupted them. Frederick Washington entered, followed by his personal assistant. At 71, Frederick still cut an imposing figure. Tall and lean with silver hair, he had the bearing of someone used to commanding respect. As chairman of the Washington Family Trust, he oversaw assets worth $2.4 billion. John, Frederick said, embracing his nephew. Are you all right, son? Yes, Uncle Fred, I'm fine. Frederick examined the torn jacket and frowned. This is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. I was just telling John we have grounds for a substantial lawsuit, Alicia said. Frederick nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps, but lawsuits are public, messy, and slow. I'm thinking of something more immediate. He turned to his assistant. Carl, please get Patricia Green on the phone. She's the regional director for First National. Right away, sir, Carl replied, stepping out of the office. Frederick sat down across from John. I've known Patricia for 15 years. We play golf at the same club. She needs to understand the gravity of the situation. John's phone buzzed with incoming messages. The videos are spreading fast. I've already had calls from 3 news outlets wanting comments. Say nothing for now, Alicia advised. We need a coordinated response. Carl returned to the office. Mr. Washington, I have Ms. Green on line 1. She says she's been trying to reach you. Frederick picked up Alicia's desk phone. Patricia? Yes. I imagine you have been trying to reach me. No, I'm with my nephew John right now. Yes, that John Washington. I think we need to meet. First thing tomorrow morning. No, not at the bank. Our offices? 9 a.m. sharp. And Patricia? Bring anyone who needs to be part of the decision-making process. This is not a minor incident. Yes, we'll see you then. He hung up and looked at John and Alicia. She's already seen the videos. Claims she's horrified and that it doesn't represent their values. Standard damage control, Alicia said skeptically. Indeed, Frederick agreed. But tomorrow they'll understand exactly what's at stake. The 3 of them spent the next hour discussing strategy. As they talked, more videos of the incident appeared online. The story was picking up steam across social media platforms. By evening, it would be on national news. At 5:30 p.m., Carl knocked again. Sir, I've been monitoring the bank's response. They just issued a public statement. He handed Frederick a printout. Frederick read it aloud. First National Bank is aware of an incident at our downtown branch today involving a customer and our security personnel. We take all customer concerns seriously and are conducting a thorough investigation. The safety and satisfaction of our customers remain our highest priorities. We will have no further comment until our investigation is complete. No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, Alicia noted. They're circling the wagons, Frederick said. Standard corporate response. John's phone rang. It was his wife, Grace. I need to take this, he said, stepping out of the office. Grace, I'm okay, he said as soon as he answered. I've been calling you for an hour, Grace said, her voice tight. With worry. The kids saw you on TV being thrown out of a bank. What happened? I'll explain everything when I get home, John promised. I'm with Uncle Fred and Alicia now. We're handling it. Handling it how? Should we get a lawyer? Should we? Grace, John interrupted gently. We have all the legal help we need. Trust me. After assuring his wife he would be home soon, John returned to Alicia's office. Frederick was on the phone again, his voice low and serious. That was Liam Scott, Frederick explained after hanging up. His family's office has over 800 million with First National. He saw the news and wanted to know what happened. What did you tell him? John asked. The truth, Frederick replied simply. Liam and I go back 30 years. He asked what we plan to do about it. And? Alicia prompted. I told him to watch what happens tomorrow. Frederick stood up. John, go home to Grace and the kids. They need to hear from you that you're okay. Alicia and I will prepare for tomorrow's meeting. What exactly are we planning to do? John asked. Frederick's expression was resolute. We're going to hit them where it hurts most, their bottom line. Back at his home in the suburbs, John found Grace waiting anxiously in the kitchen. Their two children, Zoe, 14, and Marcus, 12, rushed to hug him as soon as he walked in. Dad, we saw you on Instagram, Zoe exclaimed. Everyone at school was talking about it. Are you okay, Dad? Marcus asked more quietly. Those guards were rough. John hugged them both tightly. I'm fine. Nothing hurt but my pride. Grace studied his face. The kids have already had dinner. Let's talk in the den. Once they were alone, Grace's composure cracked slightly. John, this is serious. The whole city is talking about it. I know, John said, loosening his tie. Uncle Fred is taking charge. We're meeting with bank executives tomorrow. Are you pressing charges? Suing them? John shook his head. Uncle Fred has something else in mind. Something faster. Grace nodded. Slowly. She understood the power of the Washington family name and the resources behind it. What can I do? Just be here, John said, taking her hand. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. That night, John checked his email one last time before bed. There was a message from his assistant with links to news coverage. The story had made national news. The last link was to a financial news site, with the headline, Discrimination Claim Against First National Bank, Possible Connection to Washington Family Trust. The article mentioned that while the bank had not confirmed the identity of the customer in the viral videos, sources suggested he was John Washington, a key executive with connections to the $2.4 billion Washington Family Trust, one of First National's largest clients. John forwarded the article to Alicia and Frederick, then turned off his phone. Tomorrow would indeed be a very long day, and a very expensive one for First National Bank. The Washington family offices buzzed with activity the next morning. Staff had arrived early to prepare the main conference room. The long mahogany table gleamed under soft lighting. Pitchers of water and coffee service were arranged neatly on a side table. 7 chairs lined one side of the table, with 3 on the opposite side for the bank representatives. John arrived at 8:30, dressed in a fresh charcoal gray suit. His wife Grace had insisted on driving him. You sure you don't want me to stay? She asked as they pulled up to the building. I'll be fine, John assured her. Uncle Fred and Alicia have everything under control. In the lobby, John found his cousins Eric and Vanessa Washington already waiting. Eric managed real estate investments for the trust, while Vanessa oversaw their technology portfolio. There he is, Eric said, giving John a firm handshake. The man who broke the internet. Not funny, Vanessa scolded, hugging John. You okay? I'm fine, John replied, ready to get this over with. The 3 cousins took the elevator up together. When they arrived at the office, they found Frederick reviewing documents with Alicia. 2 other board members of the Washington Trust, George Harmon and Denise Powell, were examining something on a tablet. Good, you're all here, Frederick said. Patricia Green just called. She's bringing their chief legal officer and the head of security operations. Not the CEO? Vanessa asked. Apparently Alan Phillips is in London this week, Frederick replied. A convenient absence. Alicia handed John a folder. We've prepared a complete timeline of yesterday's events. We also obtained security footage from the bank. John raised an eyebrow. How did you get that so quickly? We have our ways, Alicia said with a slight smile. More importantly, we have a clear record of what happened. At precisely 9 o'clock, the receptionist announced the arrival of the bank representatives. Patricia Green entered first, a tall woman in her 50s with short blonde hair and a navy blue suit. Behind her followed two men, an older gentleman with glasses who carried a leather portfolio, and a younger man with a military-style haircut. Frederick stepped forward to greet them. "Patricia, thank you for coming." "Frederick," Patricia said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying nervousness. "This is Howard Benson, our Chief Legal Officer, and Gary Wright, Head of Security Operations." Frederick nodded to them without offering his hand. "Please have a seat." The 7 Washington family representatives sat on one side of the table, presenting a united front. The 3 bank officials sat opposite them, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Frederick remained standing. "Before we begin, I want to make one thing clear. This meeting is not a negotiation. It is not a discussion about how to make this go away. It is simply us informing you of decisions we have already made." Patricia's face paled slightly. "Frederick, if I may." "You may not," Frederick cut her off. "Not yet." He nodded to Alicia, who pressed a button on a remote. The large screen on the wall came to life, showing security footage from the bank. The video clearly showed John waiting in line, being skipped, and then approached by the security guard. There was no audio, but the body language told the story. The footage continued, showing John being forcibly removed while doing nothing threatening. "This is what happened yesterday," Frederick said. "Your security personnel assaulted my nephew without provocation." Gary Wright, the security head, leaned forward. "Sir, if I could explain—" "The video explains everything," Frederick interrupted. "Your guard, Kevin Miller, has a history of complaints about his treatment of minority customers. 3 complaints in the last 6 months, to be exact." Wright looked surprised. "How did you—" "We have many friends," Frederick said simply, "some of whom work for your bank." Howard Benson, the legal officer, opened his portfolio. "Mr. Washington, we understand your anger. The bank is prepared to offer a formal apology and significant compensation for this regrettable incident. We've prepared a settlement offer that we believe is more than fair." Frederick smiled without humor. "Mr. Benson, you misunderstand the purpose of this meeting. We are not interested in your money." "Then what do you want?" Patricia asked, tension evident in her voice. Frederick sat down and folded his hands on the table. "John, would you like to tell them?" John nodded and opened his folder. "The Washington Family Trust currently has $427 million in deposit accounts with First National Bank and its parent company. We use your wealth management services for an additional $1.8 billion in investments. The trust also has various lines of credit and financial instruments worth approximately $200 million. He looked up from the papers. "As of 9:30 this morning, we will be withdrawing all of it." Patricia's mouth fell open. "All of it? That's not possible. There are procedures, time frames." "We understand the procedures," Alicia cut in. "We've already prepared the necessary paperwork." She slid a thick folder across the table. "Everything is in order. We expect full cooperation in expediting these transfers." Howard Benson flipped through the documents, his face growing increasingly concerned. "This is highly unusual. A withdrawal of this magnitude would typically take weeks to process." "You have 72 hours, Frederick stated flatly. "That's not realistic," Patricia protested. "Some of these investments have lockup periods, penalties for early withdrawal." "We'll pay the penalties," Frederick said. "The money moves in 72 hours. Gary Wright, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. "Mr. Washington, I want to personally apologize for the actions of our security staff. Kevin Miller has been terminated, effective immediately. We're implementing new training protocols." "Too late," John said quietly. Patricia leaned forward, desperation in her eyes. "Frederick, we've had a relationship for 15 years. Surely we can work this out." What happened to John was inexcusable, but punishing the entire institution— "This isn't punishment, Patricia," Frederick replied. "This is consequence. Institutions change when their bottom line is affected." "Where will you move the assets?" Howard asked, still scanning the documents. "That's not your concern," Vanessa said. But rest assured, we've already secured arrangements with other institutions. Patricia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face fell further. The Scott family office is requesting an urgent meeting with our investment team. They're considering withdrawing their assets as well. Frederick nodded. Liam mentioned he might do that. You've been talking to other clients? Patricia asked, shock evident in her voice. We haven't needed to, Eric explained. The videos speak for themselves. People are drawing their own conclusions. What if we brought in Alan Phillips via video conference? Patricia suggested. He could speak directly with you, offer a personal apology. The time for apologies was yesterday, Frederick said firmly. When your staff assaulted my nephew, when your bank issued that pathetic statement that didn't even acknowledge what really happened. Howard Benson tried again. We're prepared to make significant contributions to causes of your choosing. A scholarship fund, perhaps? Community investments? Those are things you should be doing anyway, Denise Powell, one of the board members replied. Not as bargaining chips when you get caught discriminating. Patricia looked defeated. What can we do to change your minds? Frederick stood up. Nothing. Our decision is final. You have 72 hours to complete these transfers. For every hour beyond that deadline, we will issue public statements detailing exactly why we're moving our business. This will damage the bank's reputation, Patricia said quietly. Yes, Frederick agreed. It will. John closed his folder. You know what damaged my reputation? Being dragged out of your bank like a criminal when all I wanted to do was make a deposit. The meeting ended 30 minutes after it began. As the bank officials gathered their things to leave, Patricia made one last attempt. Frederick, please reconsider, she said softly. This will affect many innocent employees. Then perhaps they should question the culture that allows incidents like this to happen, Frederick replied. Good day, Patricia. After they left, the room was quiet for a moment. Then Frederick turned to John. Are you satisfied with this approach? He asked his nephew. John nodded slowly. It sends a clear message. Money talks. Indeed it does, Frederick said. And today, 2.4 billion is speaking, very loudly. News of the Washington Trust's decision spread through financial circles like wildfire. By noon, 3 more wealthy clients had contacted First National Bank about withdrawing their assets. The bank's stock price dropped 4% before lunch. John spent the afternoon in his office at the Washington Trust headquarters, fielding calls from reporters. Alicia had prepared a simple statement that he repeated to each one. This was not about seeking an apology or compensation. This was about being treated with basic human dignity. We are voting with our dollars. At 3 o'clock, his assistant knocked on his door. Mr. Washington, Harold Bennett from National Public Radio is on line 2. He says it's urgent. John recognized the name. Harold Bennett was one of the most respected journalists in the country. His weekly program reached millions of listeners. John Washington speaking, he said after picking up the phone. Mr. Washington, thank you for taking my call, Harold said. I've been following your story since yesterday. I'd like to offer you a platform to discuss what happened. Not as a soundbite, but as a thoughtful conversation about the larger issues at play. John hesitated. He had turned down several TV appearances, not wanting to become the face of yet another viral racial incident. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Bennett, but I'm not looking to extend my 15 minutes of fame. This isn't about fame, Harold replied. It's about impact. What your family is doing, withdrawing billions in assets. That's a new approach to fighting discrimination. I think people need to hear about it from you directly. John thought for a moment. When would you want to do this? Tomorrow morning. A 30-minute segment, live in studio. Let me consult with my family and get back to you, John said. After hanging up, John called Frederick and explained the offer. I think you should do it, Frederick said without hesitation. Harold Bennett is fair and thoughtful. This gives us a chance to control the narrative. John agreed to the interview. When he called Harold back to confirm, the journalist had one more question. Would you be comfortable discussing the Washington Family Trust's history? It adds important context to your story. What aspects of our history? John asked cautiously. Your grandfather's role in the civil rights movement, how he built the family fortune despite facing discrimination himself. John felt a swell of pride. Yes, I'd be happy to discuss that. The next morning, John arrived at the radio studio 30 minutes early. He wore a new suit, dark blue with a subtle pinstripe. The torn one from the bank incident had been preserved as evidence. Harold Bennett greeted him warmly. In person, the journalist was shorter than John expected, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Washington," Harold said, shaking his hand. "We'll go live in 20 minutes. Would you like some coffee while we prepare?" John accepted the coffee and followed Harold to a small preparation room. They discussed the format of the interview and the main topics they would cover. At precisely 9 o'clock, they entered the studio and put on headphones. Harold counted down from 5 with his fingers, then began. "Good morning. This is Harold Bennett. Today we're speaking with John Washington, the man at the center of a viral video showing him being forcibly removed from First National Bank. Mr. Washington, thank you for joining us." "Thank you for having me," John replied. "Let's start with the basics. Can you tell us in your own words what happened at that bank branch?" John recounted the events clearly and calmly, without embellishment. He described waiting in line, being skipped, and then approached by security. "At no point did I raise my voice or act aggressively," John explained. "Yet I was treated like a threat, and your family has since decided to withdraw all assets from First National Bank. Reports suggest that's around $2.4 billion. Sorry, is that accurate?" "Yes," John confirmed. "The Washington Family Trust had significant holdings with First National. Those assets are being moved to other institutions as we speak." "Some might say that's an extreme reaction to one incident with one security guard," Harold suggested. "This wasn't about one guard," John replied. "It was about a system that allowed it to happen. No one at the bank intervened. The manager wasn't called. The bank's first public statement didn't acknowledge any wrongdoing or even mention discrimination." Harold shifted gears. "Tell us about your grandfather, William Washington. He started the family trust, correct?" John smiled. "Yes. My grandfather was a remarkable man. He built a real estate business in the 1950s and 60s, when banks routinely denied loans to black entrepreneurs. He found creative ways to secure funding and gradually expanded into other industries. And he was active in the civil rights movement?" "Very much so. He marched with Dr. King. He helped fund legal challenges to segregation. He believed economic power was essential to achieving real equality." "What would he think about what happened to you at the bank?" John paused. "He wouldn't be surprised. Disappointed but not surprised. He always told us that respect can't be assumed. Sometimes it has to be demanded. And that's what your family is doing by withdrawing these funds? Demanding respect?" "We're showing that there are consequences for discrimination," John said firmly. "For too long, institutions have gotten away with apologizing after the fact. They promise training and policy changes, but nothing really shifts. When their bottom line is affected, that's when real change happens." The interview continued for 20 more minutes. John spoke about other incidents of banking discrimination across the country. He explained how the Washington Trust supported community banks in underserved neighborhoods. As they wrapped up, Harold asked one final question. "What message do you hope other institutions take from this situation?" "That diversity statements and inclusion initiatives mean nothing if you still treat people differently based on their appearance," John answered. "And that consumers of all backgrounds have power. Where you bank, where you shop, where you invest, these choices matter." After the interview ended, John checked his phone. He had several missed calls, including one from Alicia. He called her back immediately. "John, have you seen the news?" she asked as soon as she answered. "I've been in the interview." "What's happening?" "First National stock is down 12%. Trading was temporarily halted, and the Scott family office officially announced they're withdrawing their $800 million in assets." John let out a low whistle. "That was fast." "There's more," Alicia continued. Two other major clients, the Carter Foundation and Riverside Investments, are following suit. Together, that's another $4.6 billion leaving the bank. What's the total now? Almost $8 billion in lost assets, Alicia reported. The financial press is calling it the Washington effect. When John returned to the family offices, he found Frederick watching financial news on the large screen. The headline scrolling across the bottom read, First National Bank in Crisis, CEO cutting short London trip. Your interview was excellent, Frederick said, turning down the volume. Dignified, measured, powerful. Thanks, John replied. I just heard about the other clients pulling out. Frederick nodded. The dominoes are falling. Banks operate on trust. Once that's broken, it's very hard to rebuild. John sat down heavily in a chair. I never expected it to get this big. You underestimate your power, Frederick said. Not just as a Washington, but as a customer who was wronged. People saw themselves in you. They thought, if they can treat him that way, a successful man in a suit, how would they treat me? John's phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number with a London prefix. John Washington, he answered. Mr. Washington, this is Alan Phillips, CEO of First National Bank. The voice sounded strained, tired. I'm calling to personally apologize for what happened at our branch. It was inexcusable. I'm on my way back from London right now and would very much appreciate the opportunity to meet with you tomorrow. John looked at Frederick, who had heard the name and was watching with interest. Mr. Phillips? John replied. I think that would be appropriate. But just so we're clear, this meeting won't change our decision to move our assets. I understand, Alan said quietly. I still believe we should talk. This situation has revealed serious problems in our organization that need to be addressed, regardless of whether we can win back your business. In that case, John said, we'll see you tomorrow. 6 months had passed since the incident at First National Bank. The summer heat had given way to fall colors. John Washington stood at the window of his office watching leaves blow across the courtyard below. His phone buzzed with a message from his assistant. Mr. Phillips has arrived for your meeting. Send him in, John replied. The door opened, and Alan Phillips entered. The bank CEO looked different than he had at their first meeting 6 months ago. The stress lines on his face had softened. He carried himself with less nervous energy. John, good to see you, Alan said, extending his hand. John shook it firmly. Alan, please, have a seat. In the months since the incident, an unexpected relationship had developed between the two men. Their first meeting had been tense, Alan apologizing profusely while John and Frederick listened with skepticism. But something in Alan's sincerity had caught John's attention. The CEO seemed genuinely disturbed by what had happened and determined to make real changes. How's the implementation going? John asked as they sat down. On schedule, Alan replied. The new branch security protocols are in place at all locations. The Community Banking Initiative has opened accounts for over 5,000 previously unbanked households. John nodded approvingly. And the diversity training? Completed for all customer-facing staff, Alan said. We're now extending it to back-office operations as well. The feedback has been surprisingly positive. This was their 4th meeting since the incident. After the Washington Trust had withdrawn its assets, First National Bank had faced a crisis. Their stock had fallen nearly 20%. Rumors of a potential sale had circulated on Wall Street. But instead of looking for a quick fix, Alan Phillips had taken a different approach. He had formed a community advisory board and asked John to join it. At first, John had refused. But after several conversations with Frederick and Alicia, he had reconsidered. The advisory board included community leaders, civil rights attorneys, and financial inclusion experts. They had real power to review bank policies and practices. I've brought the latest quarterly numbers, Alan said, opening his briefcase. Loan approvals by race and income level, branch opening hours in different neighborhoods, staff diversity statistics, everything the advisory board requested. John took the folder. I'll review them before next week's meeting. Alan hesitated, then spoke again. There's something else I wanted to discuss. The bank's board has approved a major new initiative. We want to establish a $50 million fund for minority-owned businesses in underserved areas. Low-interest loans, business, development support mentoring programs. That's significant, John said, genuinely impressed. We'd like to name it the Washington Initiative, Alan continued. With your family's permission, of course. John raised an eyebrow. Why our name? Because without what happened to you, none of this would be happening, Alan admitted. Sometimes institutions need a shock to change course. You provided that shock. John leaned back in his chair. Let me discuss it with my family. But my initial reaction is positive. After Alan left, John called his uncle Frederick. The trust chairman listened carefully as John explained the proposal. What do you think? John asked when he finished. I think it's a smart move, for them and potentially for us, Frederick replied. Having our name on a program that actually helps people, that aligns with our values. But we're still not banking with them, John clarified. No, Frederick agreed. That bridge was burned. But supporting their efforts to change? That's a different matter. The Washington Family Trust had moved most of its assets to a combination of banks. A significant portion had gone to 3 Black-owned banks that had subsequently been able to expand their operations. Other funds had been placed with institutions that had strong records of community investment and fair lending practices. That evening, John attended a community meeting in a church basement. He had been doing this more often lately, connecting directly with people in neighborhoods that banks had historically underserved. Tonight, a group of small business owners had gathered to discuss access to capital. Banks don't see us, an older woman who owned a bakery said. They see our zip code and decide we're too risky. Even with good credit and solid business plans, we get rejected, added a young man who ran a landscaping company. John listened carefully. 6 months ago, he might have sympathized but felt removed from their struggles. Now, after his own experience, he understood more deeply how it felt to be judged by appearance rather than substance. When it was his turn to speak, John stood up. After what happened to me at First National, many people asked why my family pulled all our money. They said we should have used our position to negotiate changes from within. But institutions don't change because you ask nicely. They change when there are real consequences. He paused, looking around the room. First National is now creating a $50 million fund for minority-owned businesses. Not because they suddenly became generous, but because they learned a painful lesson about the cost of discrimination. A man in the back raised his hand. That's great for them, but what about all the other banks? They're just as bad. You're right, John acknowledged. That's why we need to organize. Every dollar you deposit, every loan you apply for, every investment you make is a vote for how you want to be treated. Individually, those votes might seem small. Collectively, they're powerful. After the meeting, John drove home, thinking about how much had changed. The incident at the bank had been painful and humiliating, but it had also awakened something in him, a deeper commitment to using the Washington family's resources for systemic change. The next day, John met with Alicia and Frederick to discuss the future of the Washington Trust. They sat in Frederick's home office, surrounded by family photos spanning generations. I've been thinking about Grandpa William, John said, about how he built this trust not just to make us wealthy, but to create change. Frederick nodded. He always said money without purpose is just paper. I want to propose something, John continued. A new division of the trust focused specifically on financial justice, using our investments to push for fair treatment across the banking industry. Alicia looked intrigued. Like what we did with First National, but more strategic and sustained. Exactly, John replied. We research which banks have discriminatory practices. We move our money accordingly. We help others do the same. Frederick was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. William would be proud. This is exactly what he meant when he talked about economic power as a tool for equality. 1 year to the day, after John had been dragged from First National Bank, he stood at a podium in the bank's headquarters. Behind him was a banner reading, Washington Initiative for Economic Inclusion. Cameras flashed as he and Alan Phillips shook hands. "This program won't erase what happened," John said to the gathered crowd. "One incident of discrimination revealed a deeper problem that existed long before I walked into that bank. The real test isn't what happened then, but what happens next." He looked out at the audience, which included community members, bank employees, and his own family. "True change isn't measured in dollars committed or programs launched," John continued. "It's measured in daily interactions that affirm every person's humanity. It's measured in systems that work equally well for everyone, regardless of what they look like or where they come from." As he stepped away from the podium, John felt a sense of closure. The humiliation of that day had been transformed into something meaningful. The Washington family had shown that economic power could be a force for justice when used deliberately and courageously. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind. "Money talks. Make sure yours says something worth hearing."